Every Monday and Wednesday night, it's true crime on TV1. Love, betrayal, murder, fatal attraction, all new every Monday night at 9. Then Wednesday night at 9, loyal, ride or die, bad girls, it's love to die for, with all new episodes of For My Man. Twisted love, twisted endings. Desire, deception, betrayal. True crime with fatal attraction. And For My Man every Monday and Wednesday night on TV1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 450 of the True Crime All the Time podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. How about you?
Doing very well. I didn't realize that it was episode 450. It's kind of a milestone. And normally on milestones, we do really big cases.
Yeah.
But we have one coming up next week.
Yeah.
I missed it by a week, so.
Shocker that you would have that wrong.
Yeah, something to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely.
A really big case.
Okay.
That I think people have been waiting for many, many years.
I like how you threw everybody off. I think you did it on purpose. Like they're counting on it.
No, I just messed it up.
Delay it a week.
I just messed it up. I'm going to be completely honest. Let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout outs. We had Patty Musari, Melanie Madamba,
Madama,
Peter Ozuna.
These are fun names.
Yeah.
Ozuna.
Nikki and Xavier Magnata.
Yeah, there's the Magnata.
Good old Sarah jumped out at our highest level.
Thanks, Sarah.
Tracy Dale.
There's Dell.
And last but not least, Don Reed.
I can read. Like you should read something every day.
You should.
You know?
And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Marie Helen Rancourt.
Thanks, Rancourt.
Yeah, so we appreciate the new support, the continued support, all of that. We have a brand new episode out right now on True Crime All the Time Unsolved, where we're talking about Ashley Willette and Tony Torres. And this is such a fascinating, layered, complex case. Ashley was murdered in 1999 up in Maine after leaving a sleepover at a friend's house. And then about a month later, this young man named Tony Torres kind of said what happened to Ashley, and then he went missing just a few months later and has never been found. So there's a number of mysteries here.
Yeah, it's very intriguing to me.
It is a good episode. All right, buddy, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time?
Yeah, I'm ready for this.
We're talking about David Brom. In February 1988, 16-year-old David Brom murdered his parents and younger siblings. And, this is a case where the defense is going to argue one thing. The prosecutors are going to present evidence that supports their argument, which is something, in the opposite direction. The Brom family lived in a quiet, well-to-do area of Cascade Township, Minnesota. The family consisted of 41-year-old Bernard, 40-year-old Paulette, 16-year-old David, 14-year-old Diane, and 9-year-old Ricky.
Big family.
It is. It is. And they actually had another child, the oldest child, 19-year-old Joe Brom, who was living in Rochester at the time of the murders. By 1988, David was a sophomore in high school. He and Joe both worked as cooks at a restaurant in Rochester. To outsiders, the Broms seemed like a happy, close family. And we say that a lot.
We do.
But it comes up that when you read through articles and you pay attention to what neighbors have to say about families, they're like, this was the all-American family. They seemed very happy, very close.
Now, anytime I see a really happy family,
you start to wonder.
Yeah, I'm like, you aren't that happy.
What's going on behind closed doors? Bernard had worked as an advisory engineer at IBM for 20 years. Bernard and Paulette were respected leaders at Pax Christi Catholic Church. They often hosted other members at their home for singing and social gatherings. Bernard and Paulette served as Eucharistic ministers, ushers, and leaders in the marriage counseling program. Paulette was the church's preschool director for many years, but resigned in 1986 to spend more time with family. So, no doubt, they were very active in the church. Neighbors later said there didn't appear to be any friction among the family. They said David was friendly, helpful, and often babysat younger children in the neighborhood. During a snowstorm in early 1988, David plowed his neighbor's driveway and wouldn't accept any money from him. David's manager said he was a quiet, dependable worker. His school friend said he was a sensitive person who wasn't violent. David even objected to the killing of animals in slaughterhouses. A counselor at David's school said he was sensitive, a good writer, and an artist.
Is it uncommon to hear all this wonderful stuff about this individual?
Well, I don't know that it's uncommon. I think it's less common than what you hear about, a family. Because when you're talking about someone who goes on to kill, sometimes there are signs, right? People come back and they say, well, we were worried about him, or he was doing this or doing that, or she. But in some cases, there are no signs, or the signs are missed. And maybe he was just a genuinely good, sensitive kid.
Yeah. I mean,
up to a point.
Before something changed him.
Yeah, because obviously we know something has to change for him to go from this person that everybody is describing to a murderer. Although the Broms seemed like a normal family, there were rumors about a rift between the parents and the two oldest sons. Overall, those who knew David said he was a nice boy who was often frustrated with his parents, particularly his father. He felt his parents were too strict. And I don't know that that's uncommon at all. I mean, what kid at some point or another doesn't think, oh, why are my parents doing this to me? They're too strict. They have too many rules.
Yeah, I think we've all been through that. I know I went through that.
Yeah.
Can't believe you guys are doing this to me. And my neighbors had the strictest parents ever.
The strictest? Oh.
They were pretty strict.
They were pretty strict. Yeah. My parents weren't super strict. I mean, there was rules, but, it was pretty relaxed. I had some friends, though, and they couldn't do nothing.
Yeah.
Couldn't get away with anything.
Like on lockdown all the
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm glad I don't live in that family. But not that they weren't good people. It's just,
yeah,
you're not going to have any fun. And I'm sure that's what it was designed to curb.
I also had that one friend that had
way too much freedom.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
I had one too. But he's the kid that always had the blowout kegers and stuff because his mom just didn't care.
Or she was working her third job,
right.
He had the free reign of the house.
On the evening of February 18th, 1988, the bodies of Bernard, Paulette, Diane, and Ricky Brom were found in their home in Cascade Township. Authorities went to the home after they received a call from staff at Lourdes High School who said other students reported that David Brom may have threatened to harm his family. David came to school on February 18th, but didn't attend any of his classes. His friends noticed that he had drastically changed his appearance. He dyed his hair black, shaved the sides of his head, and spiked the hair on the back of his head. He was also spotted that day purchasing a wig and makeup. Okay, so we just got done talking about David in, pretty glowing terms, right? All these people had these great things to say about him.
Yeah.
And now, all of a sudden, not that changing your appearance means that you're going to do something bad, but it had to stand out to people, especially at the school, who knew this kid.
Yeah, if you see him changing his appearance, you're hearing about him buying some makeup and a wig. On top of that, there's rumors that he talked about doing harm to his family, it's going to raise some flags.
Yeah. Well, what is going on with him? The police spoke to David's friends, who said David was having trouble with his parents, specifically his father. He and Bernard got into an argument because David purchased a punk music tape, which his parents disapproved of. And, we do kind of have to frame everything in the time frame that we're talking about, right? The late 80s was really kind of a seminal moment for music and, the lyrics and people being up in arms, wanting to slap labels on music.
Yeah.
I kind of remember all of that.
Yeah, you're right.
On February 17th, 1988, David talked about killing his parents. And on the 18th, he told a friend he had killed them. This rumor reached school staff who notified the police. When the police arrived at the Brom household, the doors were closed but not locked. Bernard, Paulette, Diane, and Ricky were found dead on the upper floor. All four had been struck at least once in the head with an axe. And when you describe a murder, or in this case, 4 murders, it's never good, but some of them are way more gruesome than others. Yeah. And I think being hit in the head with an axe, that's a very gruesome way to go.
When I hear axe, I just get even more nauseated. I don't know. It's just something about the word axe.
Yeah, it denotes savagery, carnage. Now, obviously, being shot to death is not good either.
No.
But there is something about an axe to the head that seems particularly nasty.
Maybe because it's so hands-on.
I think that's part of it, right? You're up close and personal, but also, the axe to the head is a serious blow. Ricky was in his bed. Bernard was found next to a bed in another room. Paulette and Diane were found in the hallway. It appeared that Bernard attempted to defend himself against the killer. They were in their pajamas, leading authorities to believe they were attacked in the early morning hours of February 18th. I think that's a pretty easy, safe theory to come to, right? They're still in their pajamas. So either they were killed as they slept, right before they went to bed, or before they got up.
Yeah.
A bloody axe was found in the basement. 2 cars were found in the driveway, but the family's van was missing. Authorities put out a national alert for David and spent the night searching for him. There were multiple citizen reports from people who thought they saw him in Rochester. I mean, obviously, Gibbs, he's going to be the main suspect. There's no way around that.
Yeah, I mean, he has to be, right? I mean, there's reports of him acting differently, looking differently, and he's the only person from that family unaccounted for.
That was living at the home at the time.
Yeah.
And he had actually threatened the family and told a friend that he'd killed them.
Right.
So, I mean, once police get all that information, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Pretty high on the list.
The van David was seen driving was found late that night near the Rochester Methodist Hospital. On the morning of February 19th, 1988, David was arrested at the post office in Rochester and charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder. A citizen called the Olmsted County Sheriff's Office to report seeing someone fitting David's description in a phone booth near the post office. And I thought this was pretty strange. Here's a guy who is suspected of murdering everyone in his house, his family members, but he takes the van, but doesn't leave the area.
Not the smartest guy when you think about it that way. I mean, you are a suspect in a quadruple murder. You're going to hang out? No, you should have got out of town, but he didn't.
So what does that mean? Does that mean that he, there was no planning here, or he didn't have a plan for what was to come afterwards? I think that's something we're going to have to look at as we go through the story. David didn't enter a plea at his arraignment. He was ordered to undergo psychiatric examination and was being held under 24-hour watch at the county jail prosecutors announced their intentions to try David as an adult. And that doesn't surprise me at all. I get it. He's 16 years old. But if, they think you killed 4 family members with an axe, that's an adult-like crime.
It is.
So it doesn't surprise me at all that they wanted to charge him as an adult. No motive was established, but the sheriff confirmed reports that David had a disagreement with his father over the purchase of a punk music tape. In late February, David was transferred to a juvenile detention center for a week of psychiatric testing. Prior to his hearing, the testing would assess whether David should stand trial as a juvenile or an adult. Local authorities completed their investigation in March and announced they wouldn't be making any more arrests.
Because they felt like they had their suspect.
And he acted alone, right? That's what they must have concluded.
Yeah.
David's highly publicized hearing to determine whether he should be tried as a juvenile or an adult started on April 5th, 1988. The first witness was Deputy Michael Braley, who testified he was in a state of shock. After finding the victims, he said, "I had never seen so much carnage in such a small area." And I never know, Gibbs, how big some of these police departments are, right, that we're talking about. I'm going to assume this was one that was probably on the smaller side. But even still, how many police officers have seen a house with 4 family members, murdered by an axe? I don't know how many.
Something they would never really want to ever see.
No, and I don't know how you prepare for that. The police academy is not going to prepare you for that. I don't think there's really anything that can. According to Deputy Braley, 2 kitchen knives were found in the hallway leading to David's room. Downstairs, police found hair dye splattered in a bathroom sink, an empty hair dye container, and rubber gloves. Letters and cards were strewn across the kitchen floor. It appeared as if there was a struggle in the kitchen because numerous utensils were also scattered. Deputy Coroner Dr. Catherine Burke testified that Bernard had multiple deep wounds to the back of his head, several tears in his pajamas, and several wounds on his shoulders.
I'm sure he had hit his dad hard and pretty aggressive. I mean, that was probably his biggest threat when he decided to attack his family, right? You got to take out the dad first.
Yeah, I think he would have been the biggest threat. Paulette suffered multiple wounds to the left side of her head and a deep wound to her left forearm. Ricky had wounds to the right side of his face. In total, Bernard had 22 wounds, Paulette had 19, Richard had 9, and Diane had 8. And, you can analyze the number of wounds. It was thought that he had a real issue with his dad. Is it surprising that his dad suffered more wounds than anybody else?
No.
Followed by his mom, and then his siblings had less wounds, but they were obviously fatal still.
But it's so brutal. Think about it. This is your parents, it's your siblings.
And just the thought of somebody, holding that axe, raising it up, and just raining down with it. It's a very scary thought. And if you're a parent, the last thing you expect is your 16-year-old to attack you with an axe.
Yeah, I'm sure you're taken off guard, right? And then do you fight back the way that you probably should, or you just so shocked and timid, I guess, that you don't fight back as strong as maybe one would have? Because it's your kid. You're like, I don't know if I want to hurt my own kid, even though he's hurting me.
Yeah, I think this is one of those things that nobody knows what they would do unless they were in that situation. Hey folks, you know what's more stressful than a packed calendar? Realizing you're out of coffee right before a meeting. That's why I stocked up during Thrive Market's back to school sale. And even if you're not going back to school, this is the perfect time to reset. Thrive makes it easy to shop for high quality pantry staples, snacks, vitamins, even skincare without the errands or the ingredient label deep dives. I just restocked with the Good Crisp Company crisps, original sour cream and chive. They are amazing. Everything gets delivered fast, and I saved up to 25%. Their filters make shopping by diet or lifestyle a breeze, and their healthy swaps tool helped me upgrade my usual buys with zero label stress. As I said, my wife and I are both into the Good Crisps. My wife also loves the skinny dipped milk, chocolate, peanut butter cups. Now's the best time to try Thrive Market. You'll get up to 25% off select items, and new members get 30% off their first order plus a free gift. Go to thrivemarket.com/TCAT to start saving. The sale ends 8/31. Don't miss it.
Parles-tu français? Hablas español? Parli italiano? If you've used Babbel, you would. Babbel's conversation-based techniques teaches you useful words and phrases to get you speaking quickly about the things you actually talk about in the real world. With lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts and voiced by real native speakers, Babbel is like having a private tutor in your pocket. Start speaking with Babbel today. Get up to 55% off your Babbel subscription right now at babbel.com/Wondery. Spelled BABBEL.com/Wondery. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Dr. Berg also testified that she found a notebook in David's bedroom during her investigation of the crime scene. One note said, "Killings I'll do tonight." The only other entry in the notebook was 4 horsemen of the apocalypse now. Okay, that's pretty cryptic. First one's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah.
This 4 horsemen of the apocalypse now is a little more cryptic. 2 of David's friends testified that he hated his parents and told them he killed his family. Both witnesses were only 16 and were not identified by the press. A 16-year-old student at David's school said David told her he took an axe into his parents' bedroom and hit his father several times, then killed his mother, brother, and sister. The witness rode with David in his family's van. The morning after the murders, they stopped to talk at a park. David told her his father hit him during an argument. At 4 a.m., David went into his parents' bedroom and hit his dad in the head with an axe. He repeatedly hit his father as he tried to get up from the bed. His mother was screaming and ran out of the bedroom. He left the bedroom and, quote, got his mom, then went into Ricky's room. Ricky screamed and David screamed back before hitting his brother with the axe. He returned to the hallway where he found Diane cradling his mother. She screamed, he screamed back, and then he hit Diane with the axe. David felt as if he had to leave, so he left the axe behind and fled the house. The witness and David left the park and drove to a store where she planned to call the school and tell them she was sick. At that time, David was changing clothes in the van. According to the witness, David seemed nervous, and he told me he was sick. They went to the witness's home because David wanted to cut his hair. She couldn't get it as short as he wanted, so they went to Kmart and bought a razor, then returned to her home where she helped David shave his head. The girl's mother came home while they were there. She explained that she left school because she didn't feel well, but she was feeling better now, so her mother took her to school.
If you're that girl, what's it like hearing this? And why is he telling her?
Yeah, that was my first thought is, why is he going around telling so many different people that he killed his mom, his dad, and his siblings? But yeah, your question is equally as compelling. You're digesting this information, and what do? You got to be a little scared, right? That if you do the wrong thing, say the wrong thing, maybe even act the wrong way, you could be next.
And do you really think it's best to bring him back to your house?
Again, don't know what she was thinking. She could have just been in self-preservation mode, trying to just keep his trust. I don't know. A girl David had been dating testified that he told her he hated his parents and told her he killed them.
Just another person that he tells.
He's just going around telling a lot of different people. After leaving the first witness's house, David went to the girl's school and met with her and some of her friends. They went to a pizza restaurant for lunch. The girl testified per the Rochester Post-Bulletin. David said his parents had kicked him out of the house and that he slept in the van the night before. David said he killed his parents, but they all thought it was a joke. However, she believed him when he called her after school from his home. David said he went back home to get some tapes. She asked why he was kicked out of the house. David said his dad was upset about some of his albums and thought the covers were too explicit. Later in their conversation, he said he killed his family in the early morning hours, and they were all upstairs. He wanted to get out of the house as fast as possible. David said he was going to dye his hair, move to the Twin Cities, and live on the streets. So he did have at least somewhat of a plan, but I think we know he never really kind of put it into motion. He never got that far. He claimed he had enough money to live for a couple of years. He had been to an ATM and had about $250.
Well, that's not going to get you very far.
No, but for a 16-year-old, do they always have the best understanding of money? No, not always.
Yeah, I got about enough to get me through 2 years. Oh, wait, what? I got to pay what?
Well, if you're living on the streets, okay, obviously there's not going to be a lot of expenses. Maybe he was planning on, asking for money, panhandling. I don't know. The witness saw David one more time that day when he returned her book bag, which she left in the van. He told her he was in deep trouble. He planned to sleep under a bridge and go to the Douglas Trail in Rochester in the morning. The girl testified that she met David at a church retreat in January 1988, and they started dating shortly after. She soon learned things were not well in David's home. One night, they were talking in David's van after a date. The girl testified he said he didn't like his parents. He said his dad abused him. He didn't like how they made him do everything around the house, like always chop wood. David also talked about his older brother, Joe, and how upset he was that Joe was kicked out of the house a couple of years earlier. They talked often about a fantasy in which David would hit his father over the head, take the family van, and go with her to Florida. Part of his fantasy was scaring his siblings with a knife, so they wouldn't tell his parents where he went.
So he had all these fantasies in his head on what he would think about doing someday.
But I do think this is all going to be important, right, when it comes to trial, because it kind of hints at how long this deep-seated hatred had been building up. Was it spur of the moment, or, did it kind of escalate over a period of years? And I would argue it sounds like more of the latter. Although David said he hated his parents, she didn't really believe him and wasn't sure what to think. David also talked about dying and said he was never happy. But before he wanted to die, he wanted to get back at his family. And we talk about this a lot, right? Someone says something to you, 15, 16, 17 years old. Think back about, what your friends, your boyfriend, your girlfriend says. A lot of people joke around about things that they really shouldn't joke around about.
It's true.
Or they're venting and they say, "Oh, I'm so mad I could kill them." But you don't think they really mean it.
No. But in some cases, I guess they do.
County Services worker John Raymond wrote a report recommending David to be tried as an adult. Raymond testified that David claimed he was physically abused by his father and that his family had many conflicts. Raymond also testified that after the murders, David wandered around Rochester for 30 hours. He fell asleep in a culvert before he was arrested at the post office. Under cross-examination, Raymond said the family had been in conflict for years and had sought family counseling over disagreements with Joe, who moved out when he was 16. The conflict stemmed from how Joe was treated due to differences in religious beliefs. David also felt his parents imposed strict limits on him. David told Raymond that his father physically abused him, but he didn't tell another adult because he didn't trust anyone. and thought he would be laughed at. He didn't think anyone would believe him because Bernard was well respected at church.
That's kind of a struggle for somebody that's in a abusive relationship. Who can you tell that will actually believe what you say?
Yeah, now we don't know at this point if what David is saying is true, but I think people do struggle with that, right? Do I come forward and tell this secret, right, when they are being abused? Because am I going to be believed? We've heard that before. The defense asked if Raymond was aware that David and his father argued the night before the killings and that Bernard pushed David over a coffee table. Raymond said David did mention the argument, but in his opinion, David was physically disciplined, not physically abused. No other adult, such as school counselors, ever indicated David had injuries suggesting abuse. Raymond said social services had not received any reports about the Brom family, but the defense countered that 3 years earlier, social services considered foster care for Joe Brom. And the one thing that I will say, Gibbs, is that the absence of visible injuries, the absence of reports, doesn't necessarily mean that something is not going on.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, clearly there's going to be things people can do that can hurt you that wouldn't stand out to somebody.
Raymond testified his recommendation for adult prosecution was partially based on the fact that there were multiple homicides. He agreed that David had no history of problems. Dr. Carl Malmquist, who performed David's court-ordered evaluation, diagnosed David with severe depression and said he didn't know how to deal with his aggression. David suffered from progressive depression that built up over a period of years. He tried to end his life in June and September 1987. Dr. Malmquist characterized David as an extreme case. He didn't fit the mold of most juveniles who were certified as adults after continuous trouble with the law. Malmquist testified per the Post-Bulletin, David doesn't know what to do with his aggression. He smiles. He's a nice kid. Everyone likes him. David played the role of a clown to try to make others happy. So we have differing opinions here. I think what's interesting to me about this doctor is that, he's saying most juveniles, you would see a pattern, right? A progression. They didn't see that here with David. He was a good kid. Everyone liked him. And the next thing you know, he murdered his parents and siblings with an axe.
Yeah.
David's feelings of unhappiness intensified in the 9th grade because it became difficult for him to make people happy. 2 of his close friends moved away, and his brother Joe had moved out.
Kind of lost his network.
Well, if you are a person who plays that role, right, of making others happy, and maybe that's where your self-worth comes from, if you lose that ability and you lose the friends, your core friends, okay, maybe that does something to you.
Yeah.
Your self-worth goes down because you're not able to perform that function or that role anymore. David was fearful of his father, but that fear was exaggerated. Malmquist explained he lived in terror of his father, that something terrible would happen, and David's terror was real. Part of their family conflict was that the parents didn't want David, Diane, and Ricky to turn out like Joe, so they were overly strict. And I could see that happening. We've talked about cases where parents lose, one of their children, and then they try to protect the other one or the remaining children at all costs. And part of that is not giving them the freedom that they probably would have had something not happen to one of their children. Malmquist had reservations about keeping David in the juvenile system because he felt David needed long-term treatment focused on his tendencies of self-destruction and the bursts of violence. He added, I have real reservations that I could assure myself in this court that I could step back and say he was well, and I wouldn't have to worry about suicide or homicide if he was kept in the juvenile system and released at age 19. So although this doctor does differ in some ways from the previous doctor, he's got some real reservations about David and what he would do if he was back out on the street, I think.
I don't think he's wrong.
No, I don't think he is either. He also said he believed the murders were premeditated and willful, saying it flitted in and out of his mind, just as suicide had. Mary Alice Richardson, an attorney and Joe Brom's former foster parent, testified that Bernard and Paulette were strict disciplinarians and couldn't accept their children's taste in music and dress.
I just think sometimes people can be too strict. Parents can be too strict.
They can be.
Yeah. I kind of think of the old, what was that movie? Footloose?
Mm-hmm.
The original one.
No dancing.
No dancing.
All of that.
And, yeah.
Yeah, obviously that was way too strict. But is it unusual for parents not to like the way that their kids dress sometimes, the music that they listen to? I don't think it is. But, do some people go way farther than others? Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
The court heard that Bernard and Paulette committed Joe to a locked psychiatric ward at the hospital because he wouldn't stop dressing in a punk style. Now, let's face it, man, kids go through phases.
They do.
Especially in those 14, 15, 16, 17 age range. I mean, there's all kinds of different phases.
But is that the best way to address because your son is going through a punk rock stage?
No, it doesn't seem like it to you and I, and probably not most people, but there are some people out there, right, as parents who really lay down the law. But committing him to a state psychiatric facility for the way he dresses, that's rough.
It really is rough. And if you were his brother coming up,
you're seeing it.
And you're thinking, well, I kind of want to dress that way too. What does that mean for me?
Witness Anita Fetch testified that the Brahms took Joe to the hospital under the guise of having a physical exam. Prior to his commitment, he had been staying with the Fetches for a few days. Joe was dating one of Anita's daughters. Anita testified that Bernard and Paulette misled her about why they were taking Joe to the hospital. She tried to understand what their problem was with Joe, who she said was a nice boy. And, she must have liked him to a point because she's letting him date her daughter.
Yeah.
Both Mary Richardson and Anita Fetch described Joe as a normal adolescent who happened to dress in a punk style. Joe didn't drink or smoke, and he was an above average student.
Just like to dress a certain way.
Mary Richardson testified that before becoming Joe's foster parent, she inquired with the doctor who treated him at the psychiatric hospital. The doctor described Joe as just a typical adolescent, rebelling against family rules, and there's nothing wrong with him psychologically or chemically. He just dresses punk. I mean, we're hearing it not only from his foster parent, but his girlfriend's mom. Now we're hearing it from a doctor. The Richardsons got involved because their son Edward asked if his friend Joe could live with them due to family problems. Joe spent a month with them. During that time, the Brahms only came to the house twice to drop Joe off and pick him up. They never met the Richardsons in person and didn't show concern for Joe's welfare. They called once and didn't even ask how Joe was doing. All right, that's a little cold.
It's extremely cold, I think.
Before taking Joe in, Mary talked to Paulette over the phone. Paulette said her son was argumentative, stubborn, and more than they could handle. She also warned Mary, once you see him, you won't want him.
Okay.
Why? Because of the punk dress?
Yeah.
Mary was angry. When the night before Joe was supposed to go back to his parents, she still hadn't heard from them. Joe had nowhere to go the following day. When the Richardsons were leaving for a family trip, Mary called the Brahms and told them she couldn't believe her family loved Joe more than his own parents, And that was when Bernard and Paulette finally took Joe back home. And it sounds to me like it was done begrudgingly, like they really didn't want to. Now, I want to be careful. I don't want to badmouth the Brahms, right? They are the victims in this story.
True.
But I think it is important to analyze the treatment of Joe and how it relates to, what David would have seen, would have felt during this period of time. Several teens testified that David frequently talked about suicide and made plans with several friends to take a summer trip financed with money he would obtain after killing his family. David once said he would kill his family by putting something in their foot. He told another person he was going to shoot them. And all of these people thought David was joking at the time. Now, I don't know what he was planning to put in their feet that would kill them. I don't know if this was an injection between the toes. You've seen that in TV shows and movies.
Yeah, I have. I'm not surprised people don't believe him at this point.
No, because I think most people just think this is venting, spouting off, It's not ever going to actually happen. You're just trying to let some steam off.
If your dog could talk, they'd warn you about what's lurking in their bowl. Mass-produced kibble isn't just unappetizing. It could be a crime against canine health. Mysterious byproducts, unpronounceable preservatives, and who knows what fillers. Sounds more like evidence from a crime scene than dinner. Ollie is here to crack the case on pet nutrition with fresh human-grade meals made with the highest quality ingredients. No mystery meats, no artificial junk, just real minimally processed food made in U.S. kitchens. It's the kind of clean eating that keeps tails wagging and nose sniffing for more. With 5 fresh protein-first recipes like beef with sweet potatoes and turkey with blueberries, your pup won't have to wonder what's in their food ever again. Because when it comes to their health, the only mystery should be where you hide the treats. Dogs deserve the best. And that means fresh, healthy food. Head to ollie.com/Wondery. Tell them all about your dog and use code Wondery to get 60% off your welcome kit when you subscribe today. Plus, they offer a happiness guarantee on the first box. So if you're not completely satisfied, you'll get your money back. That's OLLIE.com/Wondery and enter code Wondery to get 60% off your first box. Take 2.
Hey, football fans! Gillette's Best Shave has a new look this season, and it's looking smooth. Almost as smooth as my voice. We're talking about the new collection of Gillette Labs official NFL licensed razors, featuring the team colors and logos of 12 NFL franchises. These razors are a must-have for fans that want to experience the confidence and pride of game day every day. With Gillette's best blades and flex disc technology, Gillette Labs lasts 50% longer on average compared to Fusion 5. So get it while you can, online or at a retailer near you. Gillette's Best Shave is now the best a fan can get. Gillette Labs, also available in heated. Gillette is a paid partner of the New Heights podcast.
They still didn't believe David when he said he killed his family. On February 18th, 2 of the teens called the elementary school to see if David's younger siblings were there, and one called the Brom household to see if anyone would answer. The prosecutor introduced a notebook that contained a list of things David needed to do before and after killing his family. One entry was a list of supplies that ended with kill, bury, fast bank, hair dye.
Okay.
There were notes to call friends, have a friend get a gun, and have a friend get beer and cigarettes. And I don't really ever understand the lists. I know people journal a lot, or a lot of people do keep journals or write down their thoughts. But to write down kind of what do you want to call it, Gibbs? A to-do list for murder.
Yeah.
Seems like such damning evidence that the police are going to find at some point.
Yeah, but maybe at his age, he doesn't realize that. And he just wants to make sure he doesn't forget to do certain things. So he's going to put it down. So he's got a place to reference, when this goes down.
Yeah, I mean, the kid, he was 16 years old at the time. A crime lab analyst testified that there was strong evidence David wrote the list. However, the handwriting of another note found in David's room that said, "The killings I'll do, and will the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse ride," was not consistent with David's handwriting samples. The last witness at the hearing was psychologist Dr. James Gilbertson, who believed David could be treated for his depression and would pose no risk to the general public.
So this guy's saying, hey, we can treat him. He can be out in the general public. No concerns.
He won't ever do this again. And I get that he could have that opinion, and it could happen that way, but it could also go very badly, be taking a big risk. I think the other thing is, that kind of line between getting the help you need and paying for what you did. And sometimes that line is very gray.
Oh, yeah.
If a person has a real mental illness.
And doesn't this plan only work if there's some guarantee that he'll follow through on the treatment?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it would be mandated. He'd probably even be in a facility where he couldn't leave. But, look at some of the things we talked about, Gibbs, the planning, the telling friends that he's going to do this and this once he gets his money. That to me seems to be at odds with, not knowing what he was doing.
Yeah.
And that it was wrong.
It doesn't seem like it was a spur of the moment thing.
On April 22nd, a judge ordered that David would be tried as a juvenile because the state failed to prove he couldn't be treated or that he was a danger to the public. The judge did say, as quoted by the Post-Bulletin, "I don't agree with the outcome, but I have to follow the law. I tell my jurors that all the time, that they are to follow the law even if they don't agree with it." And that's pretty interesting when a judge comes out and says, "I don't agree with this, but the state didn't prove it." And those are two different things. He doesn't think this guy is not going to be a risk, probably should be tried as an adult, but the state didn't prove it to him.
Well, he makes a good case, right? You got to be able to prove it. And if we go this other route, we're setting ourselves up for appeals and things like that.
Well, in this case, the prosecutors appealed the decision and asked that the proceedings be postponed until the case was reviewed by the Minnesota Court of Appeals. In June 1988, David was transferred to a treatment facility in Texas for severely emotionally disturbed children and adolescents, per the Post-Bulletin. This was at the request of his defense because they wanted David in a juvenile psychiatric facility. The Minnesota Court of Appeals heard oral arguments on whether David should be tried as a juvenile or an adult on August 11th. On October 18th, 1988, the Court of Appeals reversed the ruling and ordered David to be tried as an adult. The defense appealed to the Minnesota Supreme Court, but lost. And I just wonder how the original judge felt about that. Coming out and saying, "I don't agree with what I'm doing, but I feel like it's the right thing to do." I don't think he was probably all that upset that he was overturned.
No, I mean, at least he said what he needed to say to make his conscience and professionalism heard, right? He's saying the law doesn't allow for this, in his opinion. Well, obviously somebody else felt that it did, and they overruled him, and that's what it is.
David returned to Rochester in January 1989 to begin the process of standing trial as an adult. On January 26th, a grand jury returned an 8-count indictment against David. He was indicted on 4 counts of first-degree murder and 4 counts of second-degree murder. David pleaded not guilty to the charges. David's attorneys filed a notice that they may rely on a mental illness defense. Opening arguments in David's trial started on September 27th, 1989. David pleaded not guilty and not guilty by reason of mental illness to all the charges against him. Because of this, his trial was split into 2 phases. One to determine whether he was guilty of first or second degree murder, and one where his defense had the burden of proving his legal mental illness. According to State v. Brom, during phase 1, the defense requested permission to introduce expert psychiatric testimony about David's capacity to premeditate his actions. The court denied the request, and the defense rested without offering testimony.
That's gotta hurt.
Well, I sounds like they were hanging their hat on this one expert. Defense attorney Terry Walter said in opening arguments that there was no doubt David killed his parents, but he added, "At least I concede that the physical body of David Brom committed the physical acts he is accused of." Walter said he expected the jury to return some guilty verdict. The question was whether it would be first or second degree murder. They argued that there was no premeditation to support a first degree murder verdict. The prosecutor told the jury that David's former classmates would speak of a long-standing game that preceded the murders. This game included talk by David about how he would kill his family and go on a trip funded by his family's credit cards and cash. They also introduced David's notebook, which contained the list of things to do before and after the murders to support their premeditation argument. The defense questioned if there was a way to tell when the entries were made.
I mean, this is not good.
For him
Yeah.
and the defense, I would say no, because there does seem to be quite a bit of evidence of premeditation, right, on the part of David Brom. Two friends of David's testified that he had an imaginary friend called Just in Time, who was almost like a part of him. Okay. I mean, who didn't have an imaginary friend growing up? I didn't have one at 16 years old, though. I have to be honest about that. When I was little, sure. You have an imaginary friend you talk to. I was an only child. I needed one. You probably didn't need one because you had two brothers and you were all beating the you-know-what out of each other.
That's true.
Day in and day out.
I have one now, though.
Because you need one.
It's right over there.
I see him. Just in Time. That's such a strange name.
I know. I'm thinking, is it a play on words?
Why are you thinking that? Yes, obviously it's a play on words. You think that the imaginary friend's name just happens to be Justin and his last name is Time? Not Just in Time?
It's kind of like that one Patreon member we got a couple weeks ago.
Who was that? You can't remember, can you?
I can't.
It's a good story. This makes for good pod.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It was like Richard.
Richard Handler?
Yeah. Richard Handler.
I got you.
Yeah.
Just in Time was both a pen name and a fictional character David used in many short stories and poems. David never said he was just in time, but the character was who he wanted to be. One girl testified, as quoted by the Post-Bulletin, in school, he was the clown. He made everybody laugh. He made everybody smile. Outside, he was serious. He was darker. He was still sweet and gentle and kind, but he was serious. David told one of his friends he thought about ending his life every single second of the day.
It's rough, man.
Yeah, if that's the truth, that is a horrible way to live. David's former girlfriend, Catherine Rigmar, testified that they broke up because David was too depressing. He was preoccupied with death and suicide and wrote morbid poetry. The girl who David spent the morning of February 18th with testified that David described in detail how he killed his parents. David said he just kept on swinging for about half an hour.
Well, with 20-some hits on his dad, 19-some hits on his mom, and the rest of the hits on his siblings, yeah, I guess it probably was nonstop swinging.
But I don't know how many people have split wood. A half hour of splitting wood is one heck of a workout.
Yeah, for sure.
Swinging a fairly heavy axe that many times is not the easiest thing to do. David said it was really gross and told her that someone has to be sick to be doing something like this.
So is that him trying to label himself?
Well, it's almost like he's talking about himself in the third person, right? Like this wasn't really me, even though it was. In closing arguments, the defense said David didn't plan to kill his family. It was an act of impulsivity, carried out amidst screaming and crying. The prosecution argued that it was a clear case of premeditation. David had a plan that he discussed with his friends. He wrote down lists and followed through with many of the things on that list. The jury was instructed not to consider evidence of David's mental illness in phase 1 deliberations. And I thought, to me, this is a very interesting part of this case, kind of the two phases. Now, we're used to the guilt or innocence phase and then the sentencing.
Right.
But this is different. On October 3rd, 1989, David Brom was found guilty of 4 counts of first-degree murder. So then in phase 2, it was David's defense who bore the burden of proving his legal mental illness. The defense presented testimony from a psychiatrist who concluded that David didn't understand that killing his parents and siblings was wrong, and therefore he was legally insane. The state called 4 psychiatrists. 2 of the 4 concluded David was not legally insane at the time of the murders, and 2 didn't offer an opinion as to his mental illness. However, all of the experts agreed that David suffered some form of mental illness or impairment.
I mean, to swing an axe at your parents and your siblings, I think there's something there.
Well, I think it's hard for most people to believe that someone doesn't know that that is wrong. Now, there are some people who are mentally ill to the point where they don't know right from wrong. But is that David Brom? One person saying yes, 2 people are saying no, 2 other experts aren't sure, or they're not willing to say either way.
Is this him playing like the Edward Norton role, in that one movie?
Oh, the one with Richard Gere?
Yeah.
That was a good movie.
It was a really good movie.
According to the Post-Bulletin, Dr. James Stevens testified for the defense that David was diagnosed with atypical psychosis, depression, and multiple personalities. David didn't know the nature of his acts or that they were wrong. However, the Texas psychiatrist who treated David daily for over 6 months testified that David was depressed and had borderline personality disorder, but was not psychotic. Dr. Carl Malmquist testified that David did not see himself as a criminal. He felt relief after the killings. He quoted David as saying during his psychiatric evaluation, "Until this all happened, it was like I had such a great burden, which I could not escape from. It was like it took a great deal to make me laugh. The feeling I had inside me was like I was full, not of food, but rather that I couldn't handle anymore. It was like if a feather was put on me, I'd collapse." David first thought about taking his life, but that expanded to killing his entire family. He didn't want Ricky and Diane to feel sad about the loss of their parents. He also felt he had to kill the family so no one could interfere with him carrying out the acts.
So that's his reasoning.
But what acts are we talking about here? Him ending his life? Because I feel like if that's what he wanted to do, he could have done that without killing his family.
Sure.
The incident that triggered the murders was David's argument with his father on February 17th. Bernard pushed him into a table and said if his attitude didn't improve, he would lose his albums. David said he thought about running away, but it hadn't worked for Joe. He thought about killing himself, but also said, "I thought my parents were the only burdens I had left to relieve all the stress and tension." David stayed up all night thinking. At 3 a.m., he got an axe from the garage and went to his parents' bedroom. He remembered standing in the doorway with the axe. According to David, he said, "When I think about it, I get kind of sick. What I remember is gross. I walk into my parents' room and they're asleep. I have the axe. There's a lot of screaming in there. I'm screaming, they're screaming. I was scared. I don't remember hitting anyone. I could hear the screaming though, and it went on and on. Then I remember being in my room and packing things like blankets. All the lights were on, and I had to go into each room. My brother was in his bedroom, and my mother and sister in the hall. There was blood everywhere." David said, "I've always held in my aggression, and I don't know how I could have done it. The anger inside me grew and grew. When I was in the room those hours, I felt angry, frustrated, and confused when I dwelled on it. I think I snapped.
I think he did too. I mean, he's sitting there thinking about it. And just like that, come 3 o'clock, he makes the decision to go out to the garage, grab the axe, and he's going to do this thing. He's 16 years old. He decides to do this.
But is that a snap? That's the thing that I have, or the question I have. Is it a question of snapping, or, as he put it, I snapped, when you've been talking and plotting and planning ahead of time?
Maybe not snapped, but there has to be something that finally pushes you to do something so violent. You can talk about it all day. I'm going to kill them. I hate them. I'm going to kill them. But are you really going to do anything? But what pushes you to actually finally go out, put your hands on an axe, and have the nerve to walk up to your dad and do what he did?
Yeah, but see, I think with him, it was more than just talk. It was planning, right? He had written it down. He had told friends what he was going to do with the money he would get from killing his parents. On October 15th, 1989, the jury found David guilty of 4 counts of first-degree murder during Phase 2. On October 16th, David received 4 life sentences, 3 to run consecutively, and the 4th to run concurrently to the last consecutive term. Under state law at the time, David was required to serve 17 and a half years for each life sentence, for a total of 52 and a half years in prison, before he would be eligible for parole. According to the outlet KTTC, the judge's decision to make the sentences for the murder of his younger siblings concurrent was controversial. Many questioned why Diane's life seemed to be worth less than her younger brother's. Some argued that the judge was giving David leniency because he was a juvenile. In 2023, Minnesota lawmakers ended life without parole for juveniles. The new law changed the minimum term of imprisonment for individuals under 18 at the time of the offense, which made David eligible for parole after serving a total of 30 years. KTTC reported that during his 36 years in prison, David had just one violation. Dated August 24th, 1992, he was cited for Rule 500, violation of special unit regulations. At the time, David's housing unit couldn't have more than 4 people in a cell at any given time, and he was observed with 5 people. I mean, okay, for 36 years in prison, that's the only thing you're ever busted for?
That's pretty good.
Either you're really good at hiding stuff or you're just not going against the rules. David's review before the parole board took place in January 2025. He apologized and said he was struggling with depression at the time of the murders. KTTC quoted him as saying, "I thought these things were going to last forever, and I knew I couldn't live with that forever. And in that clouded depression, I started to believe other people were at fault for the way I felt." On July 29th, 2025, David Brom, now 53 years old, was granted work release. He'll be residing in a halfway house in the Twin Cities area per the Minnesota DOC. His work release involves case management, supervision, and GPS monitoring. David's recent release refocused attention on this older case and brought up important conversations on laws regarding juvenile sentencing for violent crimes. So it's a timely case in that he just got this or was granted this work release. Obviously, the murders go all the way back to the late 80s. And I do think, as we wrap this one up, Gibbs, it's these types of cases that can sometimes divide people. Anytime you're talking about mental health,
right?
Who's right and who's wrong about the state of this guy's mental health? You have people saying he didn't know what he was doing at the time was wrong. You have others saying, yeah, he was depressed. He had some mental health issues, but he knew what he was doing.
And he should be held accountable.
Yes. Those are difficult sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, you got a juvenile with or without mental illness, depending on how you look at it, or some form of mental illness. It's going to be tough. And like you said, you're going to be a split decision.
Yeah, let's not discount the fact that he was 16. Obviously what he did was horrible. It's hard to fully know what he went through, inside the home. There was a lot of talk of abuse, and possibly there was quite a bit of it. We don't know for sure, though. I think what gets me, what I keep coming back to, is the level of premeditation. Talking about what he was going to do with this money that he would get once his family was dead, the writing of the list. I don't know that this was a case of an argument that happened the night before that caused him to sit up all night and then just snap in a rage. It just seems like there was much more to it than that had been building up for a while. What I don't know is exactly what role mental illness played, and how can we know for sure?
Yeah, I don't think we can.
But he was so young when he killed his family that, he's now like our age.
Yeah.
And can still, if he gets out, live a life. Now, I don't know what that life will be.
Well, I'm sure it's going to be better than what he's been living in prison.
Oh, absolutely. But if he had been 18 or 19,
yeah,
I don't think he's ever getting out.
No.
For that type of heinous quadruple murder.
He's in there for life.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. That's it for our episode on David Brom. We got a voicemail. You want to check that out?
Let's check it out.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. I've been listening for a while and never thought I would actually call and leave a voicemail, but here it goes. I am listening to your James Van Callis episode, and I got to the part where you're talking about the victim having studied German and being really into it, and it's just funny because that's actually my first language, and a lot of my really close friends I ended up finding because we had a common bond over them loving the German language while being American. So my best friend studied it in college to become do international business and all of that. So there are a lot of people out there who study German and really enjoy studying German. So I was just going to give you a little clue on that. But love the podcast. I once listened to you guys on a trip from California to Kansas and Oklahoma and back. So that was a lot of hours of true crime all the time. And I'm getting back into it, as you can see, since I'm only on the James Van Callis episode this season. But you guys are doing great and love listening to you. Thanks. Bye.
9.
Is that all the German you know?
That's it.
Okay.
I think it means no. I don't know.
I think it does too.
It is like from Stalag 8 or 18 or what? Captain. I was going to get ready to say Captain Kirk.
Yeah, I don't know what you're saying. I don't think you know what you're saying.
You don't remember Stalag? Stalag? What the hell is it called?
I think that's the first problem is you're messing that word up.
Yeah.
I know what you're trying to say, but yeah. I get it. German to me sounds like, and maybe it's just how it comes out. It sounds like such an angry language.
Yeah.
Like people are angry when they're not even saying things that really they're mad about.
They're like, I love you, but however you say it in German, the women are like, oh, okay.
But we appreciate the voicemail very much.
Yeah, we do.
All right, buddy. That is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
It's all a lighthearted nightmare on our podcast, Morbid.
We're your hosts. I'm Alina Urquhart.
And I'm Ash Kelly.
And our show is part true crime, part spooky, and part comedy.
The stories we cover are well-researched.
Of the 880 men who survived the attack, around 400 would eventually find their way to one another and merge into one larger group.
With a touch of humor.
Shout out to her.
Shout out to all my therapists throughout the years. There's been like 8 of them.
A dash of sarcasm and just garnished a bit with a little bit of cursing.
That motherfucker is not real!
And if you're a weirdo like us and love to cozy up to a creepy tale of the paranormal,
Or you love to hop in the Wayback Machine and dissect the details of some of history's most notorious crimes,
you should tune in to our podcast, Morbid. Follow Morbid on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen to episodes early and ad-free by joining Wondery Plus in the Wondery app or on Apple Podcasts.